Welcome back, Lincoln Currency. Have you ever looked at a simple coin in your pocket, something as small and ordinary as a 1-cent piece, and wondered if behind its copper glow lies a story that could shock the world? The 1987 1-cent coin is one of those numismatic mysteries that has captivated collectors, historians, and everyday people who stumble upon a dusty jar of change in their attic. At first glance, it seems like nothing more than the humble penny, the lowest denomination of currency, the coin most of us pass around without thought. But the truth is, when we dig deeper into its history, its design, its symbolism, its variations, and the unexpected twists of fate that sometimes make ordinary objects worth extraordinary sums of money, we begin to see why the legend of the 1987 1-cent coin has gained such momentum. And yes, you've probably heard whispers about how one of these coins, under the right circumstances, has been valued not at 1 cent, not even at a few hundred or a few $1,000s, but at a staggering market value, with claims soaring up to $43 million. That kind of number almost sounds unbelievable, but in the world of rare coins, myths and reality often dance together, making collectors chase stories as much as metal. Let's begin with the coin itself, the simple 1-cent piece minted in 1987. To understand it, we have to picture the everyday world of the 1980s. This was an era before smartphones, before the internet was everywhere, a time when coins and cash flowed through every hand, every register, every pocket. The 1-cent coin was already iconic, instantly recognizable with its coppery tone. In the United States, the coin was part of the Lincoln Cent series, a design that traces its history back to 1909, when the face of President Abraham Lincoln was first chosen to mark the 100th anniversary of his birth. By the time 1987 rolled around, the Lincoln Cent had already been circulating for decades, but its familiarity didn't make it boring. It made it a piece of everyday heritage, a small reminder of history that people carried with them. The design of the 1987 penny is deceptively simple but filled with meaning. On the obverse side, we see the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design by Victor David Brenner. This portrait has become one of the most famous in American coinage history, not only because of Lincoln's enduring legacy but because of the details Brenner captured in the image. The profile of Lincoln, facing right, is sharp and distinguished, his hair textured, his jaw firm, his bow tie neatly centered under his chin. Around his image are the words, "In God We Trust." At the top, Liberty, to the left, and the year of mintage, 1987, to the right. Below Lincoln's portrait is the mint mark, a tiny letter that can tell us whether the coin came from Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. For most people, those letters are just tiny details, but for collectors, the presence or absence of a mint mark can mean the difference between a common penny and a valuable treasure. Turn the coin over to the reverse side and you'll see one of the most iconic images in coin history, the Lincoln Memorial. This design, introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, replaced the wheat ears that had graced the reverse of the cent for decades. On the 1987 penny, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly, framed by the words, "United States of America," above and the denomination, 1 cent, below. And if you look closely, right in the center between the columns of the memorial, you can spot a tiny, almost hidden detail, a minuscule figure of the seated Lincoln, just like in the real memorial in Washington, D.C. This tiny figure is one of those artistic flourishes that people often overlook but that adds an extra layer of charm for those who take the time to notice. Now, let's talk about the physical specifications of the 1987 1-cent coin. By this point in history, the penny was no longer made from pure copper. Before 1982, pennies were 95% copper, which gave them a heavier feel and a more distinct metallic ring when dropped. But starting in 1982, the U.S. Mint transitioned to a copper-plated zinc composition, meaning that pennies were now 97.5% zinc with just a thin layer of copper on the outside. The reason was economic. Copper prices had risen so high that the metal content of the penny was worth more than its face value, and it no longer made sense to mint coins that cost more than 1 cent to produce. So, by 1987, every penny that came out of the mint weighed 2.5 grams and had a diameter of 19 millimeters. To the naked eye, They looked the same as the older copper pennies, but to collectors, the change in composition marked a major shift in the history of the coin. So, what makes the 1987 penny so fascinating to collectors today? After all, billions of them were minted. In fact, the Philadelphia Mint alone struck more than 4.6 billion pennies that year, while Denver produced over 4.5 billion. That means nearly 9 billion coins rolled off the presses in 1987, making the penny one of the most common coins in circulation. With numbers like that, you'd expect every 1987 penny to be worth exactly 1 cent and nothing more. But here's where the story takes its twist. Not all coins are created equal. Some come off the press with errors. Some are struck in unusual conditions. Some are preserved in such pristine condition that they gleam today as if they were minted yesterday. And it's in those rare exceptions that we find the value. Collectors often seek out coins with errors, double strikes, off-center strikes, die cracks, misaligned dies, or coins struck on the wrong planchet. Imagine a penny struck on a dime blank, thinner and lighter than it should be, or a penny with part of Lincoln's face doubled because the die shifted during striking. These kinds of errors are accidental, but they create unique coins that collectors prize. A regular 1987 penny might only be worth a cent, but a 1987 penny with a dramatic error can sell for hundreds, thousands, or even more depending on its rarity and condition. Condition, too, plays a massive role in determining value. Most pennies circulate, passing from hand to hand until they're scratched, worn, and tarnished. But once in a while, a coin is saved, set aside the day it was minted, stored in a collection, or kept in a sealed mint set. These coins, graded by professional services, can achieve designations like MS65, MS67, or even higher. At those grades, the coin is no longer just a piece of pocket change, it's a tiny time capsule, a piece of history preserved with flawless beauty. High-grade 1987 pennies can sell for surprising amounts at auctions, sometimes reaching into the hundreds or thousands of dollars. And then, of course, comes the myth, the legend that captures everyone's attention, the idea that a 1987 penny could be worth $43 million. On the surface, this claim sounds impossible. How could a 1-cent coin, produced by the billions, be worth more than the most famous rare coins in history, more than gold coins, more than entire collections? The answer lies in the world of rumors, hoaxes, and extraordinary stories that sometimes surround coins. Some collectors and treasure hunters spread tales of unique errors, one-of-a-kind coins that escaped the mint under mysterious circumstances. These stories capture the imagination, making ordinary people dream that the penny in their pocket could be their ticket to unimaginable wealth. But here's the fascinating thing. While the $43 million valuation may not hold up under the strict scrutiny of professional numismatics, the very existence of such a story keeps the 1987 penny in the spotlight. People search their change jars. They inspect their old collections. They share stories online. And in doing so, the legend of the coin grows. That's the magic of collecting, not just the metal itself but the stories we tell, the possibilities we imagine, the treasures we dream of uncovering. To understand why people can believe in such astronomical values, we have to look at the psychology of rarity. Human beings are naturally drawn to the rare, the unique, the one-of-a-kind. When something is common, it has little appeal, but when something is rare, even if it's just a tiny variation in a coin, it suddenly becomes desirable. Add to that the thrill of treasure hunting, the possibility of striking it rich with something as simple as a penny, and you have the perfect recipe for a captivating legend. That's why so many YouTube videos, articles, and social media posts talk about rare pennies worth millions. They tapped into our shared dream of finding hidden fortune in the ordinary. The 1987 penny, then, is more than just a coin. It's a symbol. It represents the continuity of American history, linking the past of Abraham Lincoln with the modern world of the late 20th century. It represents the economic decisions of the government, switching from copper to zinc to save money. It represents the artistry of coin design, with details like the tiny Lincoln in the memorial. It represents the immense scale of the minting process, billions of coins rolling off the presses, each identical yet each with the potential to be unique. And above all, it represents the stories we tell about value, rarity, and wealth. As we dive deeper into this exploration, we'll uncover more about how exactly coins like the 1987 penny can leap from pocket change to prized possession, how the market for rare coins operates, how professional grading systems determine value, how myths about million-dollar coins spread, and what role collectors play in keeping these stories alive. But remember, it all starts with a coin that most people overlook, a coin that sits unnoticed in a drawer or a jar. And it's that very contrast, the ordinary hiding the extraordinary, that makes the journey so compelling. When we talk about the 1987 penny, we are really talking about much more than a piece of metal. We are talking about a bridge between eras, a tiny artifact that carries with it the echoes of decisions made decades earlier, the legacy of designs chosen long before most people holding the coin were even born. To understand the power of this little cent, we have to trace its roots back to the very beginnings of American coinage and see how a series of events, choices, and innovations led us to the exact coin that would one day be minted in 1987. The story begins not in 1987, but in 1909, when the United States Mint made a decision that would forever change the way coins looked in the country. That was the year when Abraham Lincoln's face first appeared on the cent. Up until that point, U.S. coins had never featured a real person. Instead, they carried images of liberty, allegorical figures meant to represent ideals rather than individuals. The decision to place Lincoln on the cent was controversial at the time. Many critics argued that it was inappropriate to honor a specific individual on a coin, fearing it would set a precedent. But President Theodore Roosevelt, always eager to push boundaries and elevate American art, strongly supported the idea. The cent would be the perfect place to honor Lincoln's centennial, marking 100 years since his birth in 1809. Victor David Brenner, a Lithuanian-born engraver, was chosen to design the coin. His profile of Lincoln was bold, lifelike, and dignified, based in part on a photograph by Matthew Brady. Brenner's initials, VDB, were originally placed prominently on the reverse of the coin, and controversy arose when critics said the signature was too large. As a result, his initials were removed shortly after the first cents were minted in 1909, only to be restored decades later in a subtler fashion on the obverse, beneath Lincoln's shoulder. That little story about the initials tells us something important. Every detail on a coin is debated, considered, and remembered. By 1987, the Brenner portrait had already been on the cent for 78 years, becoming one of the most recognizable images in circulation. The reverse, as we know, changed in 1959. For half a century, the cent had displayed two wheat ears flanking the words 1 cent. Collectors call those coins wheat pennies. But in 1959, on the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, the mint replaced the wheat design with the Lincoln Memorial. This change was symbolic. It showed not just Lincoln the man but the grand monument built in his honor, placing his image within the larger context of American memory. By the time we reached 1987, this reverse design had already been circulating for nearly 3 decades, familiar to every American who handled change. Now, when people hear about a coin being worth millions of dollars, they often assume it must be old, rare, or made of precious metals. But the fascinating thing about coins like the 1987 penny is that their extraordinary value, or at least their rumored value, doesn't come from age or gold content. It comes from uniqueness. Coins become valuable when they are one of a kind, when they feature errors or anomalies that make them unlike the billions of others that exist. Take, for instance, the world of minting errors. Imagine the vast machinery of the mint, striking hundreds of coins every minute, day after day. Even with precision engineering, mistakes happen. A blank meant for a dime might get fed into the penny press, producing a coin of the wrong weight. A die might crack, leaving jagged lines across Lincoln's face. The dies themselves might clash without a blank between them, creating unusual raised patterns on subsequent coins. Or the planchets might be improperly plated, exposing zinc under the copper layer. Each of these mistakes, rare though they may be, produces coins that collectors call error coins. And error coins can sell for astonishing sums. Now imagine if one such error occurred in 1987. Maybe a double denomination strike, maybe a rare off-metal strike, maybe something so unusual that only one example exists. That coin, by definition, becomes priceless, because no other one like it exists. And this is where stories of pennies worth millions emerge. Because if someone were to discover a unique 1987-era penny, in pristine condition, preserved against the odds, collectors would bid fiercely to own it. Prices could escalate beyond logic, driven not just by rarity but by the prestige of ownership. After all, in the world of numismatics, owning the unique coin is like holding a piece of treasure no one else on earth can claim. But let's also talk about grading, because the condition of a coin is often the difference between pocket change and prize. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC use a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 representing a perfect, flawless coin. A 1987 penny fresh from circulation, with scratches and wear, might grade at MS 60 or lower, barely worth more than face value. But a 1987 penny pulled from a mint set, untouched and shining, could grade MS 67, MS 68, or higher. Coins at these top grades are exceedingly rare, because even the slightest scratch, the tiniest blemish, reduces the grade. At auction, high-grade 1987 pennies have sold for hundreds of dollars, sometimes more. While that's far from 43 million, it shows us how the market values condition almost as much as rarity. And then comes the psychology of collecting, the human side of the story. Collectors are dreamers. They are people who look at everyday objects and see history, value, and potential. They chase completeness, wanting to own one of every year, every mint mark, every variety. They chase uniqueness, wanting to hold something no one else has. And they chase stories, the legends of coins worth fortunes, the thrill of finding the rare gem in the most ordinary place. That's why stories of pennies worth millions spread so quickly, because they tap into our universal desire to believe that hidden treasures are still out there, waiting to be discovered. It's not hard to see why the 1987 penny in particular has become the focus of such stories. It sits in that sweet spot of being modern enough that many people still have them in jars and drawers, yet old enough that people start to think of them as vintage. Add in the fact that billions were made, increasing the odds that someone could stumble upon an unusual variety, and you have the perfect recipe for fascination. When people hear that a 1987 penny might be worth $43 million, they rush to their collections, to their piggy banks, to their change jars, inspecting every coin with newfound hope. The number itself, 43 million, sounds outrageous, and in truth, it probably is. No confirmed sale of any 1987 penny has ever reached anywhere close to that amount. But numbers in numismatics often take on lives of their own. A rumor of a high sale circulates, people repeat it, exaggerate it, and soon it becomes legend. And in a way, that legend is just as powerful as reality, because it keeps the story alive, it keeps people looking, and it keeps the humble penny from being forgotten. Let us not forget that coins are more than money. They are art, history, and culture stamped into metal. When you hold a 1987 penny, you are holding a piece of the late 20th century, a moment when the Cold War was still alive, when the Berlin Wall had not yet fallen, when Ronald Reagan was president, when the world was on the cusp of technological change. That penny circulated in a time when payphones still lined the streets, when arcade machines swallowed quarters, when cassette tapes were the cutting edge of music. Each penny that survived carries the fingerprints of that era. And for collectors, that context adds to the meaning. Now, imagine the auction scene for a rare 1987 penny. The room is hushed, the coin displayed under bright lights, its copper surface gleaming as if frozen in time. Bidders raise their paddles, the numbers climb higher and higher, and the tension builds. What drives them is not just the desire to own a coin but the desire to own the story behind it, the prestige of possessing something that will be talked about in collecting circles for generations. Even if the final price is not 43 million, the excitement, the drama, the sheer spectacle of the auction makes the coin priceless in its own way. For the average person, though, the dream of finding a rare 1987 penny is just as exciting. Imagine pouring out an old coffee can of change inherited from a grandparent, sifting through dusty nickels and dimes, and suddenly spotting that familiar copper coin with the date 1987. At first, you think nothing of it. But then you remember the stories, the rumors of extraordinary value. You hold it up to the light, examine the mint mark, look for any signs of doubling or errors. Your heart races with the thought, what if this is the one? That moment of possibility, that heartbeat of wonder, is what keeps the legend alive. So whether or not the $43 million claim is ever proven true, the fact remains. The 1987 penny has become a symbol of hidden treasure, of the extraordinary hiding in the ordinary. And that is something powerful, because it transforms the way we see our world. It reminds us to look closer, to pay attention, to appreciate the details in the things we take for granted. In the end, maybe the true value of the 1987 penny isn't measured in dollars but in the stories it inspires, the dreams it fuels, and the connections it creates between history, art, and human imagination. The story of the 1987 penny continues to unfold the deeper we look, and what fascinates most people is not just the coin itself, but the extraordinary ways small mistakes can turn a mass-produced object into a one-of-a-kind treasure. The U.S. Mint has always prided itself on precision, on the consistency of billions of coins produced every year. But perfection is a goal, not always a reality. And it is in the cracks between perfection and imperfection where value is born. Imagine, for example, a die doubling error. This happens when the die used to strike the coin carries a doubled image, transferring that duplication onto the coin itself. On a 1987 penny, this could appear as doubled letters in Liberty, or a shadowed second date, or even doubling in God We Trust. Such coins stand out immediately to the trained eye, because the lettering looks almost blurry, layered, or thickened in unusual ways. Collectors pay significant premiums for such errors, because each one is scarce, and the scarcer the variety, the higher the demand. Or consider the off-center strike. This occurs when the planchet, the blank metal disc, isn't properly seated in the press, and the design lands off to one side. In mild cases, the coin looks odd, with part of the image shifted. In extreme cases, you might see half a coin with a blank crescent of untouched metal. A 1987 penny struck 20, 30, even 50% off center could command hundreds of dollars, maybe thousands if preserved in mint state. These errors catch attention because they are visually dramatic. No need for a magnifying glass, anyone can see the strangeness at a glance. Then there are broad strikes, where the coin is struck without the collar that normally restrains it, causing it to spread wider and thinner than usual. Or clipped planchets, where part of the blank was cut improperly, and the coin ends up missing a curved section of metal. Each of these errors transforms an everyday penny into an object of fascination. Collectors marvel at how the strict machinery of the mint could produce such anomalies. And in that marvel lies value. But not all valuable variations are errors. Some are intentional differences created by the mint itself. For example, proof coins struck in 1987 at the San Francisco Mint. Proofs are not circulation coins. They are specially made for collectors, struck multiple times with polished dies to produce mirror-like surfaces and frosted details. A 1987 S-proof penny might not be rare in itself, since thousands were made for proof sets, but in perfect condition, graded PR70, such a coin can sell for substantial amounts. Collectors love perfection, and perfection in proof coins is incredibly challenging to achieve because even the tiniest speck or scratch disqualifies them. And beyond errors and proofs, there are transitional stories that fire the imagination. Remember that 1982 was the year of transition from copper to zinc. In the years following, rumors spread of stray copper planchets slipping through into later years, being struck accidentally when they should not have existed. Imagine, then, if a 1987 penny had been struck on an old copper planchet weighing 3.11 grams instead of the usual 2.5 grams. If such a coin were to surface, it would instantly become a legendary rarity, because it would represent a mistake that should never have been possible. Collectors would clamor for it, driving prices upward with no ceiling in sight. And here is where those fabled multimillion-dollar valuations come into play, because a coin like that would be more than just metal. It would be history in error form, a piece of numismatic folklore made real. Now, let us think about the marketplace. Rare coins exist in a world driven by passion as much as by logic. When a unique coin appears, there is no clear price guide to consult, no easy way to assign value. Instead, the price is determined by competition, by how badly collectors and investors want to own it. Auctions become arenas, with each bid pushing the number higher, fueled not only by rarity but by ego, prestige, and the desire to make history. We have seen coins in other series, like the 1794 flowing hair dollar, cross the $10 million mark. We have seen a 1933 double eagle, once declared illegal to own, sell for over $18 million. If those coins can reach such heights, is it really so far-fetched that a unique 1987-era penny, in the right circumstances, could be bid up into the tens of millions? The number 43 million might sound exaggerated, but the truth is, once bidding wars ignite, logic can take a back seat to desire. It's also worth noting how myths grow in this world. One collector claims to have heard about a sale. Another repeats it with a higher figure. Soon articles online inflate the number. Social media passes it along as fact. Before long, the legend of a $43 million penny is everywhere. Whether it was a real transaction, a rumor, or a fabrication hardly matters, because the story itself has taken on a life of its own. People love the idea that hidden fortune lies within something as small as a penny, and they share the story endlessly, each retelling fueling the fire. But myths alone would not endure if they did not connect to something deeper in us. Coins are not just currency, they are tiny works of art, tangible links to history, and symbols of trust. The penny, in particular, has always carried symbolic weight in America. It bears the face of Lincoln, the president who preserved the Union and ended slavery, a figure of integrity and resilience. It carries the motto, "In God we trust," a phrase meant to capture national faith. It bears the word, "liberty," reminding us of the ideals on which the nation was founded. These words and images are stamped into billions of coins, yet each one carries the same message. In that sense, the penny is more than money, it is a cultural artifact. The 1987 penny specifically also ties us to a unique historical moment. It was minted during the Reagan years, a period defined by Cold War tension but also optimism about America's strength. It was the year of the Iran-Contra hearings, the Black Monday stock market crash, and the release of movies like The Untouchables and Full Metal Jacket. Each penny struck that year passed through hands that lived those days, hands that bought newspapers reporting those events, hands that dropped coins into vending machines glowing with arcade lights. To hold a 1987 penny today is to hold a silent witness to that time. And when collectors assign extraordinary values to such coins, they are not just valuing the metal, they are valuing the memories, the context, the slice of history. Let's return for a moment to the grading process, because this is where dreams and reality meet. The grading scale is unforgiving. An MS-70 grade means absolute perfection, no scratches, no blemishes, no contact marks visible even under magnification. Very few coins ever achieve this. Most 1987 pennies have long since circulated, showing wear on Lincoln's cheek, smoothing of the hair, faintness in the memorial details. These are the coins that will never rise beyond face value. But those few that were set aside from the start, preserved in original mint packaging, have a chance at greatness. And when one of these surfaces in auction, certified at a top grade, collectors leap at the opportunity. Even without errors, even without unique stories, condition alone can make the difference between 1 cent and hundreds of dollars. Yet the greatest thrill is not in buying a coin at auction but in finding one unexpectedly. That is the dream that keeps people searching. A coin show might display glittering cases of rarities, but the excitement in a person's eyes when they say, "I found this in my change," cannot be overstated. The 1987 penny legend fuels that excitement. Every time someone checks a coin jar, every time someone flips over a penny and squints at the date, every time someone pulls out a scale to weigh it, the legend lives on. Whether or not anyone ever truly owns a $43 million penny, The dream has already paid dividends by giving millions of people a reason to look closer, to learn, to imagine. In that sense, the 1987 penny is not just a coin of copper and zinc. It is a coin of dreams, a coin of legends, a coin of what-ifs. It sits quietly in jars and drawers, waiting for discovery, waiting for the story to be retold. And each time the story is told, the penny becomes more than it was before. It becomes a talisman of hope, a reminder that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places. When we look at the legend of the 1987 penny and its supposed value of $43 million, one of the most important things we can do is compare it with other coins that have reached astronomical prices. Because while the figure sounds almost absurd for something so modern and so small, history shows us that extraordinary prices are not only possible, they have happened time and time again when rarity, condition, and desire align. Take the 1933 Double Eagle, a $20 gold coin that was never officially released into circulation. Almost all of them were melted down, but a handful slipped into private hands under mysterious circumstances. For decades, the government declared them illegal to own, seizing examples whenever they surfaced. Yet in 2002, one of those coins was legally sold at auction for over $7 million, a record at the time. Then, in 2021, another example shattered records again, selling for more than $18 million. This shows us the power of rarity combined with controversy. Coins with stories, coins with mystery, coins with myth always capture the market's imagination. Then there's the 1794 flowing hair silver dollar, widely believed to be the very first dollar coin struck by the United States Mint. Only a few survive in high condition, and when one came to auction in 2013, it sold for over $10 million. Here the appeal was not just rarity, but historical importance. Owning the first dollar ever made was like owning a piece of the country's birth itself. We can look, too, at the 1804 draped bust dollar, often called the king of American coins. Despite bearing the date 1804, these coins were actually struck decades later as diplomatic gifts. Only 15 are known to exist. Collectors have paid millions for them, not because of intrinsic metal content, but because of the story, the legend, the aura of exclusivity. And in the world of sense, we cannot forget the 1943 copper penny. In that year, the mint switched to steel planchets coated with zinc because copper was needed for the war effort. Yet a few copper planchets from 1942 somehow found their way into the presses, creating one of the most famous errors in numismatic history. Those 1943 copper cents have sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes more than $1 million. Proving that even the humble penny can make headlines when it is unique enough. So when people whisper about a 1987 penny being worth $43 million, it might sound ridiculous at first. But when you remember these precedents, coins that broke barriers, coins that defied expectations, it starts to seem less impossible, at least in the imagination. Because value in this world is not dictated purely by metal or mintage. It is dictated by rarity, story, and desire. If a coin exists that is truly unique, if it captures attention on a global scale, then its value becomes whatever someone is willing to pay, and history has shown that people are willing to pay staggering sums for the privilege of owning the extraordinary. Now, let's consider the role of discovery in all of this. Some of the greatest numismatic treasures have been found in the most unexpected ways. A man digging in his backyard finds a jar of coins buried generations earlier. A collector sifting through pocket change spots a doubled die penny. A child opening a roll of coins from the bank notices one that looks different and stumbles upon a rarity worth thousands. These stories circulate because they fuel the idea that fortune could be anywhere, waiting for anyone. That's why the 1987 penny legend matters. It invites people everywhere to look at their own change with curiosity. It democratizes treasure hunting, because anyone can have pennies in their pocket, and anyone might, in theory, stumble upon the extraordinary. Think about the psychology of that for a moment. We live in a world where wealth often seems locked away, reserved for those who already have it. But the penny is universal. Everyone has touched one. Everyone can search for one. And the idea that a 1-cent coin could secretly be worth millions speaks to something deep inside us. The hope that wealth and luck are not reserved for the elite but could come to anyone, at any time, if only they look closely enough. That is why stories of million-dollar pennies spread so quickly and endure for so long. The 1987 penny also represents a fascinating intersection of old and new. On one hand, it belongs to the modern era, struck by advanced machinery in vast quantities. On the other hand, it still carries a design rooted in 1909, a design that itself was revolutionary at the time. It links generations of Americans, from those who first carried wheat cents in the early 20th century to those who saw the Lincoln Memorial design in the late 20th century. It is continuity in copper and zinc, a thread tying together a century of history. And yet, within that continuity, there are always exceptions. The exceptions are what collectors crave. A perfectly struck proof with deep cameo contrast. An error so dramatic that it transforms the coin into art. A condition so flawless that it seems unbelievable the coin ever survived untouched. These exceptions are like stars in the night sky, rare, brilliant, and inspiring. And when people hear that one such star might shine as bright as $43 million, they cannot resist looking upward, or in this case, downward into their change jars. The very act of searching becomes a ritual. People spread coins across a table, line them up by date and mintmark, peer through magnifying glasses, weigh them on tiny scales. Some spend hours, days, even years searching. And while most will never find a coin worth millions, they find something else, a connection to history, a sense of discovery, a joy in the hunt. That joy is the hidden value of the 1987 penny legend. It is not just about the destination but about the journey, the process of searching, learning, and appreciating the smallest details of something most people overlook. If we step back and think of coins as symbols, the penny becomes even more meaningful. It is the smallest unit of value, often dismissed, sometimes even left on sidewalks because people think it isn't worth the trouble to pick up. And yet, in stories like the 1987 penny legend, that smallest unit becomes priceless, reversing the hierarchy, challenging the way we think about value. It teaches us that worth is not always measured by face value or size, but by rarity, uniqueness, and story. A penny can be worthless or priceless depending on context, and that duality makes it fascinating. Now picture the scene in which someone finally brings a legendary 1987 penny to market. It appears in a glossy catalog, photographed with perfect lighting, its surfaces gleaming copper red. Collectors whisper about it in online forums, speculation builds, anticipation grows. When the day of the auction arrives, the room is tense, every eye fixed on the coin as the bidding begins. Numbers climb higher, paddles rise, the auctioneer's voice quickens, and the world watches as the price enters the realm of the unimaginable. When the gavel finally falls, the coin has set a record that will be talked about for decades. Whether the final number is truly 43 million or some other staggering figure, the effect is the same. The coin becomes immortalized in history, a symbol of how the ordinary can become extraordinary. And after that auction, after the headlines, after the interviews and the excitement, something even more powerful happens. Millions of people who never cared about coins suddenly start checking their change. The legend spreads wider, the dream grows stronger, and the cycle continues. That is how a single coin, a single year, a single penny, can spark a movement that transcends numismatics and enters popular culture. The 1987 penny becomes not just a collector's item but a cultural phenomenon, a touchstone of imagination and possibility. The enduring legend of the 1987 penny doesn't live in isolation. It exists within a larger world of fascination with small, seemingly insignificant objects that carry enormous stories. Coins have always held a strange power over people. They are not just money, not just round bits of metal used in trade, but tiny storytellers, witnesses to the passage of time, markers of human ambition and creativity. And across the globe, from the bustling markets of Asia to the auction houses of Europe to the coin shows of North America, this fascination repeats itself again and again. Consider for a moment that every country on Earth has its own coins, each one with unique symbols, leaders, designs, and histories. In Canada, for instance, The 1-cent coin minted in 1987 carries the iconic maple leaf design, instantly recognizable as a symbol of national pride. In the United Kingdom, the penny bears the image of Queen Elizabeth II, tying it to centuries of monarchy. In nations across Asia, Africa, and South America, coins of similar denominations also serve as small ambassadors of identity, carrying coats of arms, animals, plants, and slogans that tell us who a people are and what they value. The U.S. 1987 penny belongs to this global conversation. It represents not only America but also the universal human habit of stamping meaning into metal. When the story of a $43 million penny circulates, it crosses borders. People in faraway places who have never held an American cent suddenly learn about Abraham Lincoln, about the Lincoln Memorial, about U.S. mint practices. In that sense, the myth becomes more than a tale of money, it becomes a cultural bridge, spreading history and curiosity to places far from where the coin was struck. A child in India, a collector in Germany, an enthusiast in Brazil, all of them can hear the story and feel the thrill of possibility. It is a story that does not belong to America alone but to anyone who has ever dreamed of turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. And this brings us to the idea of markets reacting to sensation. The coin market is unlike many others because it thrives not only on tangible qualities, metal, grade, rarity, but also on narratives. A coin's story often drives its value as much as its physical existence. When news outlets report on a rare discovery, or when social media posts go viral about a supposed $1 million coin, the market feels the tremors. People rush to check their change. Dealers field phone calls from curious owners. Auction houses see spikes in interest. Even if the original story is exaggerated, the ripple effect is real, and it can push prices upward for related coins. For example, when a news story breaks about a rare 1943 copper cent selling for a huge price, interest in all 1943 pennies skyrockets. People start pulling steel cents out of circulation, hoping they've found copper. Coin shops are flooded with hopefuls. Most of them are disappointed, but the overall market benefits because attention drives demand, and demand drives value. The same dynamic occurs with the 1987 penny. Even though no verified example has actually sold for $43 million, the legend alone has boosted its profile, making more collectors pay attention to coins from that year, more dealers stock examples, and more hobbyists take an interest in pennies in general. What is remarkable is that myths like these never truly fade. They evolve. They get retold in new formats. A story once whispered between collectors becomes an article on a website. That article becomes a viral YouTube video. That video inspires TikTok shorts, Instagram reels, and endless reposts. Each retelling adjusts the details slightly, sometimes exaggerating, sometimes simplifying, but always keeping the core alive. The idea that a coin worth only 1 cent could secretly be a ticket to fortune. The myth becomes a self-sustaining engine, fueling curiosity long after the facts are forgotten. But why do these myths endure for decades, sometimes centuries? The answer lies in human psychology. We are creatures of stories. We crave the narrative of hidden treasure, of riches discovered in plain sight. Think of how often this theme appears in folklore, in literature, in movies. Pirates bury gold. Farmers uncover ancient hoards. Children stumble upon magic coins. The penny myth fits seamlessly into this timeless tradition, because it promises that wealth is not locked in vaults, but might be hiding in our very pockets. The 1987 penny also speaks to the cultural value of persistence. Collectors are not passive, they are searchers, hunters, detectives. They spend hours with magnifying glasses, poring over tiny details, learning to spot doubled dies, repunched mint marks, micro variations invisible to the untrained eye. To them, the hunt is half the fun. The myth of the $43 million penny energizes that hunt, making every coin feel like a potential jackpot. Even if no one ever finds such a coin, the search itself becomes the reward, because it teaches patience, attention to detail, and the joy of discovery. Now, imagine the role of the auctioneer when presenting a legendary coin. The gavel poised in hand, the crowd waiting with anticipation, The auctioneer recites the coin's story, the date, the mint, the error, the rarity. But more than that, they sell the dream. They speak not just of metal but of history, not just of grade but of glory. And as the bids climb higher, what is being purchased is not simply a coin but a story, a legend, a place in history. The buyer is not just adding to their collection, they are writing their name into the narrative, becoming forever associated with a myth that will outlast them. Think, too, about how small coins reflect big truths about society. A penny may be the lowest unit of value, but it also represents inclusivity. Anyone can own a penny. Anyone can touch it, examine it, dream about it. That is why the penny is such a powerful symbol. It blurs the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary, the accessible and the unattainable. The 1987 penny, in particular, has become a symbol not just of monetary worth but of hope, of the belief that anyone, anywhere, could stumble upon life-changing fortune in the palm of their hand. And what does this say about value itself? Value is not absolute. It is not dictated solely by face numbers stamped on coins. Value is subjective, shaped by perception, demand, rarity, and imagination. 1 cent can equal 1 cent. 1 cent can equal $1. 1 cent can equal $100, 1,000, or in stories, even 43 million. The leap from face value to legendary value is a leap of imagination, and in that leap we find the essence of human creativity. We invent worth. We assign meaning. We elevate the ordinary until it shines. In the end, the story of the 1987 penny is less about whether one particular coin is truly worth tens of millions, and more about how the idea of that value inspires us. It reminds us that treasure may not always glitter, that fortune may not always be heavy with gold. Sometimes fortune is small, light, copper-colored, and hiding in plain sight. Sometimes it is not about what you hold in your hand but about the dream it carries, the story it tells, and the spark it ignites in your imagination. Every collector, whether they deal in coins, stamps, cards, or antiques, lives for the story of the great find. And in the world of coins, the most electrifying tales are often the simplest. Someone finds a fortune hidden in ordinary change. It might sound like folklore, but there are countless true accounts of people stumbling onto valuable pieces in the most casual, everyday circumstances. Take the case of the man in Massachusetts who, in the early 2000s, received a strange-looking penny in his change from a grocery store. It turned out to be a 1943 copper cent, one of those wartime rarities we've already mentioned. After authentication, that one coin, handed to him with no thought at all, was valued at well over $100,000. That moment transformed him from a casual spender into someone who now checked every coin with care. His story spread across news outlets, feeding the belief that hidden treasure could be found in the most mundane of places. Another story comes from a young boy in the Midwest, whose father gave him a roll of pennies from the bank. The boy, sorting through them one by one, came across a 1955 double-die cent, one of the most famous era coins in American history. The doubling on the date and lettering is so dramatic it can be seen with the naked eye, and collectors have paid thousands of dollars for examples in high condition. Imagine being a child, playing with coins at the kitchen table, and suddenly holding something that experts drool over. That single discovery can change the way someone views money forever. Then there's the couple in California who purchased a house and found jars of coins hidden in the crawlspace. Among the jars were dozens of early Lincoln wheat cents in near mint condition, some of which were worth hundreds of dollars apiece. The thrill wasn't just in the monetary gain but in the sense of uncovering history, of touching the past through these tiny artifacts. Stories like these explain why people keep believing in legends like the 1987 penny worth $43 million. Even if the exact claim is exaggerated, the pattern is real. Coins of immense value do turn up in everyday places, and the line between myth and reality is not as wide as skeptics would assume. The possibility is enough to keep millions of eyes scanning their change every day. But why does this act of searching captivate us so deeply? The psychology of collectors offers clues. Collecting is about control, about imposing order on chaos. In a world that often feels overwhelming, collectors create meaning by categorizing, arranging, and completing sets. A pile of pennies is not just metal, it's a puzzle, a hunt, a mystery waiting to be solved. Each date, each mint mark, each variation is a clue, and the collector becomes a detective. That sense of mastery, of solving a puzzle, is immensely satisfying. There's also the thrill of rarity. Humans are wired to value what is scarce. When something is hard to find, it becomes desirable. This is why diamonds, which are essentially just carbon, hold immense market value. Scarcity creates allure. In coin collecting, rarity is the engine of excitement. A penny from 1987 may seem ordinary, but if only one example exists with a dramatic error, that single coin becomes a holy grail, and its story captivates collectors worldwide. And let's not overlook nostalgia. For many, coins connect us to childhood. We remember grandparents who saved pennies in jars, parents who handed us coins for candy, or long afternoons spent filling coin folders with Lincoln cents. That emotional connection amplifies the appeal. To hold an old penny is to hold a piece of your own past, or the nation's past, in your hand. The 1987 penny belongs to that continuum, linking personal memory with collective history. The myth of the $43 million penny transforms from a mere rumor into a lifestyle for some. Entire communities of coin hunters spring up around these stories. They meet at conventions, trade online, share videos, and encourage each other to keep searching. What starts as a simple hobby, checking coins in spare time, often becomes a lifelong passion. For some, it even becomes a career. Dealers, graders, auctioneers, historians, all of them began as curious collectors drawn by stories like this. In this way, the penny is not just a coin but a doorway. Through it, people enter a world of knowledge, history, art, and community. The hunt for rare coins leads them to study minting technology, economics, and national history. They learn about engravers, about shifts in metal composition, about how global events like wars and depressions influence the smallest details on coins. What begins with curiosity about 1 cent grows into a deep understanding of civilization itself. That is the hidden power of legends like the 1987 penny. They inspire education, connection, and passion on a scale far beyond their size, and when you think about lifestyle, it goes even deeper. Some collectors structure their days around the hunt. They visit banks weekly to obtain rolls of coins, sort through them at night, catalog their finds, and trade online with others doing the same. Weekends are spent at coin shows, evenings reading numismatic journals, vacations planned around visiting historical mints or museums. What to outsiders may look like an obsession is, to insiders, a source of joy, identity, and belonging. The 1987 penny story fuels that fire, reminding everyone why they fell in love with the hobby in the first place. Beyond collectors, these stories seep into the public imagination because they align with a universal dream, the dream of sudden wealth, of stumbling upon fortune without warning. That dream is ancient, echoed in fables and fairy tales. The penny myth is simply a modern version of the genie's lamp or the dragon's hoard. It tells us that magic still exists, not in far-off lands, but in our very pockets. And that is why it resonates so powerfully, why people never tire of hearing it retold. Think of it this way: when someone buys a lottery ticket, they know the odds are astronomical. Yet they still buy, because the dream itself is worth the price of admission. Similarly, when someone sifts through a jar of coins, they know the chance of finding a multi-million-dollar rarity is microscopic. But the act of searching, the hope, the possibility, that is priceless. The 1987 penny legend is a lottery ticket you can play every day without spending anything more than your attention. And sometimes, the dream pays off in unexpected ways. Even if no one uncovers the mythical $43 million penny, they may find something else, a doubled die, a misstrike, a proof-like example, that brings them hundreds or thousands of dollars. More importantly, they find joy, knowledge, and a sense of purpose. The true fortune is not only in the coin but in the experience it creates. So, as we imagine the 1987 penny tucked away in someone's change jar, waiting to be discovered, we realize that it is more than a coin. It is a symbol of possibility. It is a reminder that wonder can hide in plain sight. It is proof that even in a world obsessed with speed and technology, something as small and simple as a penny can still command our imagination, our attention, and perhaps even our destiny. As we look ahead to the future of coin collecting, the 1987 penny takes on a new dimension. It is no longer just a story told at coin shows or in hushed conversations between collectors. In the digital era, it becomes a viral phenomenon, passed along through videos, forums, and social networks. What once might have been an obscure numismatic rumor now spreads to millions overnight, crossing borders and languages with ease. The legend is no longer confined to hobbyists but enters the bloodstream of popular culture itself. Consider the role of online marketplaces. A generation ago, coin collecting was limited by geography. You went to local shops, attended regional shows, traded with friends, and maybe subscribed to a few specialty magazines. If you lived in a small town, your access to rare coins was limited. But today, the internet has blown those barriers apart. With a few clicks, collectors can buy coins from across the world, bid in live auctions hosted on another continent, or compare notes instantly with people thousands of miles away. The market has gone global, and stories like the 1987 penny benefit enormously from that expansion. When someone hears about a mythical multi-million-dollar penny, their first instinct is to search online. Within seconds they find forums, YouTube channels, TikTok videos, and auction archives. They see images of pennies magnified, explained, dissected. They learn terminology like mint mark, proof strike, planchet error. In the process of chasing the story, they become educated, sometimes without even realizing it. This is how myths transform ordinary people into collectors, and the digital age accelerates that transformation at lightning speed. But there is another layer: the rise of digital grading and certification. In the past, disputes about a coin's authenticity could drag on endlessly. A seller might claim an error, a buyer might doubt it. Today, trusted grading companies offer professional certification, sealing coins in tamper-proof holders with barcodes and holograms. Their judgment carries authority, and their online databases let collectors verify details instantly. This infrastructure adds credibility to the market and gives legends like the 1987 penny a foundation on which to stand. If someone truly found an extraordinary 1987 cent, it would likely pass through one of these grading services before reaching the auction block, giving the claim weight and legitimacy. And then we must talk about how technology shapes demand itself. Algorithms track searches, feed videos into recommendations, and amplify viral stories. If enough people are curious about a rare penny, the internet itself ensures that the curiosity spreads further, like a spark becoming a wildfire. What starts as a niche numismatic whisper can suddenly appear on mainstream news, on morning talk shows, even on international headlines. At that point, the legend has transcended the hobby entirely and become a cultural touchstone. The 1987 penny has the potential to do exactly that. Whether or not an actual $43 million sale ever occurs, the story is perfectly designed for the internet. It's short, surprising, and accessible. Anyone can understand it. The idea that a 1-cent coin could be worth millions requires no background knowledge, only imagination. It is the kind of story that thrives in a digital ecosystem built on attention, shares, and shock value. And once people are hooked, the deeper layers of history, design, and collecting become available to them, leading many down the rabbit hole of numismatics. Looking further into the future, one wonders how digital technology might redefine value itself. Already we see digital collectibles, non-fungible tokens, and virtual markets where ownership exists only in data, not in physical objects. Yet even in this futuristic landscape, coins maintain a stubborn appeal. Unlike digital tokens, coins are tangible. You can hold them, feel their weight, sense their texture. They connect you physically to the past in a way no screen ever could. Perhaps that is why legends like the 1987 penny thrive even in the age of cryptocurrency. They offer something that feels real, solid, rooted. At the same time, digital tools may enhance coin collecting in ways we can barely imagine. Augmented reality apps could allow people to scan their change instantly, highlighting rare varieties and glowing overlays. Artificial intelligence could analyze microscopic details of a coin to confirm authenticity with near-perfect accuracy. Global databases could record every rare coin discovered, creating a living map of treasures scattered across the planet. In that world, the discovery of a legendary penny would not just make headlines, it would be tracked, celebrated, and analyzed in real time by millions of eyes. And think of how markets might respond. If the day ever comes when a 1987 penny does sell for $43 million, the shockwaves would be enormous. Prices for other modern coins would rise as collectors rushed to speculate. Dealers would scramble to stock 1980s cents, which until then might have been overlooked. New grading tiers might emerge, designed to capture every subtle nuance of late 20th century coinage. Auction houses would compete for the spotlight, trying to secure the next big sale. The legend would not only inspire curiosity but reshape the entire economic landscape of the hobby. Yet even if no such sale ever takes place, the myth will continue to evolve. Children will grow up hearing about the $1,000,000 penny. Teenagers will stumble upon videos claiming fortunes can be made from pocket change. Adults will glance twice at the coins they once ignored. And somewhere, someday, someone will discover something remarkable. Maybe not a 1987 worth millions, but some other overlooked rarity that changes their life. In that moment, the myth will be vindicated, not because the exact details were true, but because the spirit of the story proved real. Ultimately, the 1987 penny represents the enduring human hunger for wonder. In an age of technology, when information is instant and mysteries seem scarce, we still crave the thrill of the hidden, the rare, the unexpected. We want to believe that magic exists not only in legends of the past but in the objects we handle every day. And so, the tale of a penny worth $43 million survives, not as a simple fact but as a modern myth, part truth, part dream, all possibility. Imagine for a moment the day the legendary coin finally surfaces. It doesn't happen in a bank vault or a high-security facility. It happens in the most ordinary place possible, as these stories often do. Perhaps a teenager cleaning out their grandfather's old coin jar finds a penny that looks slightly different. The color seems brighter, the strike unusually sharp. They don't think much of it at first, tossing it into a pile of other change. But later, while scrolling on their phone, they stumble across a video about rare coins, and something clicks. They rush back to the jar, hold the coin under the light, compare the details, and realize they may be holding something extraordinary. At first, disbelief rules. Surely it can't be real. Surely it's just a regular penny. But the thought lingers. They show it to a parent, who shrugs it off. They show it to a teacher, who suggests getting it appraised. Eventually, the coin makes its way into the hands of a local dealer. The dealer examines it under magnification, tests its weight, compares its die characteristics. Slowly, their expression changes from skepticism to awe. They whisper the words every collector dreams of hearing: "This could be the coin." News spreads fast in today's world. Before the day is done, photos are online. Within hours, coin forums light up with speculation. Is it authentic? Is this truly the long-rumored 1987 rarity? Numismatists from around the globe weigh in, debating details of the strike, the rim, the lettering. By nightfall, mainstream outlets pick up the story. The next morning, headlines appear across the world. Teenager discovers 1987 penny worth millions. What happens next is a frenzy unlike anything the hobby has ever seen. Reporters camp outside the family's home. Television crews beg for interviews. Auction houses scramble to make offers, each one hoping to secure the right to present the coin to the world. The family, overwhelmed, seeks legal advice, unsure whether to sell, to donate, or to keep. Social media explodes with memes, speculation, and disbelief. Millions of people dig into their pockets, suddenly examining every cent they own with newfound intensity. The coin is eventually authenticated by a leading grading service. Encased in a clear holder, its label printed with bold lettering, the penny becomes a celebrity in its own right. Photos of it circulate globally. Experts declare it unique, the result of a rare error or experimental strike that should never have left the mint. It is confirmed as one of a kind, the holy grail of modern pennies. An auction is announced, to be held in New York under the brightest of lights. Weeks of anticipation follow. Every major news outlet covers the build-up, and collectors from every corner of the globe prepare to bid. The auction room on that fateful night is packed with billionaires, celebrities, historians, and ordinary enthusiasts who simply want to witness history. The coin rests in a glass case, illuminated like a jewel. Cameras flash as the auctioneer lifts the gavel. The bidding starts modestly, at perhaps $100,000, but quickly escalates. 1 million, 2 million, 5 million. The room buzzes with excitement. Phones ring as representatives relay offers from overseas. Online bids pour in from anonymous millionaires watching the live stream. 10 million, 15 million, 20. The auctioneer's voice quickens, the crowd gasps as the numbers climb higher and higher. 30 million, 35 million, 40. Finally, after a tense silence, one last paddle rises. The gavel comes down. Sold, $43 million. The room erupts in applause. Cameras flash. Reporters rush to broadcast the result. The penny is now the most expensive coin in history, eclipsing centuries of rarities. The buyer, revealed to be a reclusive billionaire with a passion for Americana, smiles as they hold their prize aloft. The seller, once an ordinary teenager, is now set for life, their name forever linked with one of the greatest discoveries in numismatic history. But the story does not end there. The ripple effects are massive. Suddenly, every penny from the 1980s skyrockets in interest. Collectors scour rolls of coins, hoping lightning might strike twice. Dealers raise prices, grading companies see surges of submissions, and the hobby experiences a boom unseen in decades. Documentaries are produced, books are written, and the penny becomes a cultural icon. Children in classrooms across America learn not only about Lincoln but about the legend of the coin that changed everything. The cultural meaning deepens. The penny, long dismissed as almost worthless, is now the symbol of hidden value. It reminds people never to overlook the small, the humble, the ordinary. Philosophers write about it, preachers reference it in sermons, motivational speakers use it as a metaphor for potential hidden in plain sight. The 1987 penny becomes more than money. It becomes myth, and what of the teenager who found it? Their life changes forever. Scholarships flood in. Offers for interviews, endorsements, even movie rights arrive. They become a reluctant celebrity, their story retold on talk shows and podcasts. Yet beneath all the noise lies a simple truth: they found the coin not by magic, not by privilege, but by paying attention. And that message, pay attention, look closely, value the overlooked, resonates with millions. The sale reshapes the very definition of numismatics. Coins, once seen as a niche hobby, suddenly occupy front-page news. Museums report record attendance. Young people, inspired by the story, begin collecting. The market expands, the culture grows, and what was once a quiet pursuit becomes a global sensation. The legend of the 1987 penny ignites a renaissance. And still, after the frenzy, after the headlines, after the coin settles into its new owner's vault, the story continues to ripple. People keep searching their change, parents pass jars of coins to children, hopefuls line up at banks to buy rolls of pennies. The dream spreads, not because everyone expects to find another $43 million rarity, but because the possibility, however slim, makes life a little more exciting, a little more magical. In that sense, the true value of the 1987 penny is not in its sale price but in the wonder it inspires. It reminds us that the world is not as ordinary as it seems, that hidden treasures might be waiting, that fortune can come from the smallest, most overlooked things. The penny teaches us to look closely, to stay curious, to believe in possibility. And that lesson, perhaps, is worth far more than $43 million. Across human history, coins have never been just pieces of metal used to buy goods. They have always been tokens of power, of belief, of story. From the moment ancient rulers struck their images onto silver and bronze, coins became miniature storytellers, carrying ideas, gods, and kings across continents. When we place the 1987 penny in that context, Suddenly it doesn't stand alone as a quirky American rarity but as part of a universal human tradition in which small round objects of metal hold enormous cultural weight. In literature, coins often appear as symbols of fate and choice. A tossed coin decides battles, seals bargains, determines destinies. Shakespeare referenced coins in plays to explore greed, loyalty, and betrayal. In countless novels, from Dickens to modern thrillers, coins are slipped into pockets as silent indicators of class, survival, or chance. The humble penny itself has shown up in stories and poems, often as a marker of hardship or of luck. When people hear of a single penny worth millions, they instinctively connect it with these literary themes: the transformation of the ordinary into the extraordinary, the power of fate hidden in the smallest detail. In folklore, coins are everywhere. In Norse myth, treasure hoards glitter with gold and silver coins. In Greek tradition, a coin placed on the eyes of the dead paid the ferryman across the river Styx, symbolizing passage between worlds. In Irish lore, leprechauns guard pots of coins at the end of rainbows, promising riches to those who can find them. Even in Christian tradition, the 30 pieces of silver that betrayed Christ became infamous, proof of how small coins can carry monumental meaning. The penny, though modest, taps into this ancient current. It whispers to us that money is never only money, that it carries stories of morality, chance, and destiny. Film has continued the tradition. In movies, coins are often used as dramatic devices. A spinning coin determines a character's fate. A tossed coin reveals whether luck is on someone's side. Iconic films have featured rare coins as central treasures, sparking quests, betrayals, and discoveries. The audience intuitively understands that a coin is not just metal, it is possibility, suspense, drama. If tomorrow a filmmaker were to tell the story of the 1987 penny, audiences would be captivated not simply by the wealth but by the symbolism. The idea that in the most ordinary pocket change might lie an adventure of a lifetime. Religion, too, ties itself to coins. In Buddhism, coins are often left at shrines as offerings. In Hindu rituals, coins are given as blessings during festivals and weddings. In Christianity, coins appear in parables as lessons about humility and generosity, like the widow's mite, which though small was worth more than all the gold of the rich because it was given from the heart. A penny, the smallest of coins, resonates perfectly with these lessons. Its potential transformation into something worth millions is almost biblical in scale, like water turned into wine, the least becoming the greatest, the first becoming the last. When the legend of the 1987 penny spreads, it doesn't just appeal to coin collectors or economists. It appeals to this global cultural memory, the deep-rooted human understanding that coins are more than currency. They are symbols of chance, vessels of morality, carriers of stories. The idea that one coin from 1987 could fetch $43 million in the modern marketplace feels outrageous, yet it fits seamlessly into this ancient tradition. It is a modern myth that echoes old myths, a new legend that sits comfortably beside ancient ones. And myths have power. They shape the way people act, what they value, how they dream. Already, the story of the 1987 penny influences behavior. People check their change with new intensity. Children become curious about coins. Collectors find renewed passion. The myth drives action, and action in turn keeps the myth alive. In this way, the penny joins the ranks of cultural icons, not just as a rare coin but as a narrative force that shapes imagination. It's important to recognize how universal this is. A child in India, hearing about the legendary penny, connects it with the lucky coins placed under pillows. A child in Europe connects it with tales of buried treasure. A child in Africa connects it with stories of ancestral offerings and the significance of metal as a sacred gift. The coin crosses cultural borders, becoming a global symbol of hope and discovery. Its legend is not bound by the United States Mint or by collectors' markets. It belongs to everyone who has ever dreamed of finding something precious where others see nothing. There is also a psychological dimension. Coins represent control in small increments. They are manageable, tangible, everyday. When something as small and manageable as a penny suddenly carries a value of $43 million, it shocks the psyche. It blurs the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary, reminding us that our assumptions can be overturned in an instant. This destabilization is thrilling. It excites imagination and gives people a story they can carry into conversations, into dreams, into hopes. The legend of the 1987 penny is therefore not a single story about a coin. It is part of a larger cultural web that stretches back thousands of years. It is connected to Shakespearean drama, to Greek mythology, to Christian parables, to modern films, to folk rhymes whispered to children. The penny worth millions is simply the newest chapter in humanity's timeless fascination with small objects that hold great power. And in this way, it ensures its place in collective memory, not only as a coin but as a cultural touchstone. So when someone hears about a 1987 penny worth $43 million and laughs at the absurdity, they may miss the point. It doesn't matter whether they believe in its literal existence. What matters is that the story resonates, that it connects us with ancient myths and modern dreams, that it keeps alive the truth that wonder hides in the ordinary. For as long as people tell stories, they will tell stories of coins, and among those stories, the tale of the 1987 penny will gleam brightly, reminding us that even the smallest round of copper can carry the weight of human imagination.